Welcome back to Silverstone, everybody. We've got our second and final Porsche Club Motorsport Championship with Pirelli and Porsche Boxster Cup Championship race coming up for you. Round 10 of the championship for each one of the categories, whether it be the main Porsche Club Motorsport category, the Porsche Club AM category, or the Boxster Cup. They had a race earlier on today. It was an incident-packed race, which saw several retirements along the way. David Hussey with engine problems, Pete Evans with a crash into the pit wall as he came out of club and went over what is the Grand Prix start-finish line. Richard Baston with the incident at the first corner causing him suspension damage. Ed Hayes never did find out what happened to his car. Tim Harrington with problems and retirement early doors, and Charlie Dye with an off and into the gravel trap. So it was an intriguing race. We've got the grid for this race. I do think there might be the odd little gap on it here and there, but I'll guide you through the grid as I've got it in front of me at this stage. So the cars will be making their way out onto the circuit. Should be able to give you the grid. Hopefully we might get a graphic. If not, I can rattle through it manually. So the cars are lining up there on the grid, and you can see we've got sort of 3 or 4 rows and then a gap, and then we'll have another 3 or 4 rows and then a gap, and then we'll have the final section of it. And that is because all of the main Porsche Club Championship cars line up on the front row of the grid, so they'll be the front 7 rows of the grid. Then there's a 3-row gap before we then have the Porsche Club Championship AM class cars that sit there. When the lights go out, all of those 2 will go off together, and then there's a 2-row grid gap before we then see the Boxster Cup cars that have their separate grid, and they will be a 10-second delayed start, so they won't go when the lights go out. They will wait until the Union flag is raised, and then only when it's dropped will they be able to get going. So we're going to have 3 separate classes, you could argue, and 2 races to look forward to. The ones that go when the lights go out, and then the ones that will go 10 seconds later on as well. So Jake McAleer starting there on pole position. Alongside him is Simon Clark. So Simon Clark should have started in number 23 car on the outside of the front row of the grid for the race earlier on today. Didn't see his car there. It's there now, so whatever the problem was that prevented Simon from joining the grid, he is at least out there, and that is good news for him. So for Simon Clark, he'll be pleased because he's already dropping 2 poor scores from Anglesey, and drivers determine their best 12 scores of the season. So you only drop your worst 2. So for Simon Clark, that's non-start from earlier on has somewhat undone what he was looking to do, which was to try and make it another championship. So it's swung the pendulum very much in favour of Jake McAleer, who won the race earlier on today and has had a very, very consistent season. Only slight blip for Jake McAleer was a poor finish in the second of the 2 races at Anglesey, but other than that he's finished in the top 4 in every race so far, and largely in first or second place for most of those. So he's had a mega season as Jake McAleer. So off go the cars onto their formation lap. It's a fairly busy grid, so we will rattle through this one. In fact, is Jake McAleer there? Yes, he is. I think there's a revised grid been issued, so we'll wait for the graphics to come up and then we'll rattle our way through this grid, because I think there may well have been an amended grid that's been issued. So then, it is pole position for Simon Clark, and alongside is Jake McAleer. Row 2 of the grid is Mark McAleer and Pete Morris. As we head on to row 3 of the grid, it's Richard Baston that starts there with David Burke for company, and it's Chris Dyer and Steve Cheetham that line up there on row number 4. Pete Evans should be there on row number 5, but I'd be very surprised if his car is out following the damage from race number 1. And Jim Bryant should sit alongside him, and it's Stuart Marsden and Julian Morris that are next up. So head on to the next row of the grid. It will be Ed Hayes, and then we'll get a few rows gap before we then see Oliver Chatham, who is in reality on pole position for the AM category. Andrew Porter and Shiraz Khan are next up. The next row of the grid will be row number 9, and that is going to be Darren Lebet and Wayne Gregory, before we then get the car of Brian Richardson and Jess Wilkinson, who are next up. In the 11th row of the grid, it's Tom Andrew and Julian Dye, ahead of David Watt and Andreas Giorgio. Then it will be Tim Harrington, I think, will be next up on what will be the next row of the grid. And for company, here's got Alan Williams. And Jason Brown is the last of the Porsche Club AM competitors. So in reality, on pole position for those that go 10 seconds later when the flag drops, it'll be Max Watt, who is the first of the Boxster Cup cars that's out there. Bertie Bream and Vince Brewer are on the second row for the Boxster Cup. And then it's Perry Darling and Mike Thompson that are there on row number 16. Brendan Hafner and Charlie Dye sit there on the 17th row of the grid with Ben Grucock and Matt Goff on row number 18, and row 19 of the grid sees Stuart Warner line up alongside Faye Noble-Evans. Tony Levy and Martin Mason are there on the next row of the grid, and row number 21 sees the car of Barrington Darcy lining up alongside Matthew Shears. It's Eric Bridges and Graham Hurd that are next up, and on row number 23 it's David Hussey and Simon Dye, before we see Eva Nolan and Adam Spencer on what will be the 24th and final row of a very, very busy grid here. So some 48 cars, albeit I do say I think there might be the odd gap on the grid, and certainly Pete Evans is one of those that I would be very surprised if he is out with the damage that was inflicted on his car. Richard Baston's car hopefully might have been able to be fixed, but we'll have a quick look when the cars line up properly on the grid as to whether we've got gaps on what would be at the very front of the grid. There's a potential gap on row number 3 and a potential gap on row number 5, let's say. So we'll try and see whether we've got there. Richard Baston's car is all black, and Pete Evans is Dayglow yellow at the front and black at the back. So those are two cars I've got sort of a little bit of a question mark over, but hopefully they are all out there. It's going to take a while to get them all lined up again. So when you've got 48 cars out there, and the marshals on the start line need to make sure that each one is positioned on the correct row, it just take a while for everybody to get into position, and then after here they'll be packing things away and heading for the penultimate weekend of racing in the East Midlands, Donington Park. 2 25-minute races up there on the 20th of September for rounds number 11 and 12 of the championship. So a 14-round championship, you count your best 12 scores, and we're heading to that sort of critical stage of the season now where we begin to see who is rising to the top in terms of championship scoring, whilst also taking a look at what the dropped scores might be when you drop your worst 2 rounds. So it's always a fair chunk of mathematics come in at the end of a championship season. And let's hope we do get the full championship in, because it was only a couple of years ago where we were at Snetterton for the final round and there was a power cut on track and we actually couldn't race the final round, unfortunately. It was one of those that didn't take place, which is a very, very unusual set of circumstances. So I think we've got most people now into position. So if we get a look at the front of the grid, we'll see whether Richard Baston and Pete Evans are there, but I don't think probably Pete Evans will be there. Richard Baston's depends what the damage was. So Richard Baston's car is there, so that's brilliant. See the black car there on the 3rd row of the grid, but you can see there is a gap there on the 5th row of the grid where, not unsurprisingly, because it hit the concrete pit wall backwards, which of course is the business end of a Porsche with the rear engine. So Pete Evans is not out, I'm afraid. So Faye Noble-Evans is down there, further end of the grid, but Pete will be a rather frustrated spectator for this one. So tail end of the order looks as though it is into position. We'll wait the 5-second board being held aloft, which it does now. We've got 25 minutes on the clock. We're about to get round 10 of the 2025 Porsche Club Motorsport Championship with Pirelli and the Porsche Boxster Cup underway here at Silverstone. Red lights go out and the first 2 packs of cars get going. Remember, it's a 10-second delay before the Porsche Boxsters can get underway, but as the main pack of cars head up towards Copse Corner for the first time, is Jake McAleer going to have the lead of the race? He looked as though he just got his nose ahead as they turned in towards Copse Corner. And there is another poor, slow starting David Burke. He had a slow start in the first race. The Boxsters get underway. And is it going to be Max Watt that leads? It's Simon Clark that leads overall, but he gets very, very, very sideways all over the grass heading through Maggots and Beckett's, and that has allowed Jake McAleer to close in on him. But that was a scary moment there with a bit of arm twirling from Simon Clark, as no doubt the Pirelli slicks weren't quite fully up to temperature. So he still hangs on to the lead of the race, but I think he might even be surprised that he's still in the lead of the race, because that was a big old moment for him, and he means he's under attack from Jake McAleer as they head up towards Stowe Corner for the first time, with Mark McAleer sitting there in 3rd place, Pete Morris there in 4th place, and Richard Baston wheel to wheel with Chris Dyer for 5th and 6th position. But we've got one in the gravel trap, I'm afraid, and that is certainly going to be going no further. And that car, I'm afraid, even with the assistance of the marshals, Mike Thompson is not going to get out of harm's way. And that was all the Boxsters that got tangled up together, and he's not the only one that got tangled up in that one, because with a big rotation and damage to the tail end, Perry Darling is out as well, who is one of the front runners. Here's a replay of that moment for Simon Clark. You could see just too late on the brakes, the tyre's not enough temperature, and somehow, even though he was on the grass briefly and the car was wiggling around, he kept it under his spell. So good driving by Simon Clark. So localised yellow flags up at Copse corner for the moment. Steve Cheetham working his way through and past Chris Dyer, that will be. So Steve Cheetham, who joins the championship for this weekend, has gone through in his Cayman ahead of Chris Dyer. Now Chris Dyer finds himself under pressure from Jim Bryant in his newly liveried car. They head up towards the braking area for Brooklands. Steve Cheetham in the dark blue and the yellow car, just about hanging on to it. We'll try and pick out who's leading Class 2 in the early stages. Chris Dyer is having a really busy race. He's got Jim Bryan trying to wiggle his way through and past. If he looks in his mirrors, he's got Ed Hayes at the wheel of the light blue Cayman trying to squeeze his way through, and Ed has picked off Jim Bryan and is now trying to pick off Chris Dyer. Chris Dyer in the meantime is trying to pick off the car that's just ahead of him, which is number 43 Steve Cheetham. So everywhere you look, again, early stages of the race, yes, but there are battles to be had. I think the number 26 will be destined for the pits at the end of this lap. It's been a day to forget for David Burke. Had a brilliant qualifying session, had real trouble in the first race, and looks as though he's potentially heading towards retirement in the second race. That'll be 2 out of 2 for him today, and a weekend that promised so much. So the leading car in the AM category will be heading through shot any second, which is going to be Oliver Chatham. Further down through the AM category, you can see Wayne Gregory busy fighting away. He's got Tom Andrew right behind him. So those two making their way out onto the track. So the yellow windscreen headers are those that run in the main club championship. The black windscreen headers are those that run in the AM championship. And you can see Chris Dyer under attack from behind from Ed Hayes. He's trying to attack Steve Cheetham, who is in the process of trying to squeeze his way through and past Richard Bayston. So the lock brakes from Richard Bayston, not much cadence braking there, but he gets the 996 anchored up, albeit some fairly flat Pirellis I would have thought now, and loses at least one place. And of course now that drops him into the clutches of Ed Hayes, and now Julian Morris in this brand new car for him this weekend is also trying to close in. Stuart Marsden is not that far behind, and then Oliver Chatham is the leader of Class 2 at this stage. So Ed Hayes now picks off Richard Bayston and will look to try and make further progress. Started 13th position, did Ed Hayes, and may well be, I think, inside the top 6 now. So that is good progress made by him at the wheel of the light blue Porsche. Very similar colour to that we see Stuart Marsden in for this weekend in his new car. And as for the leader of Boxsters, we'll pick up on in a moment. Now this is a fight going on between Graham Hurd, and there's a little bit of contact there between himself and Martin Mason. Martin Mason's wing mirror flapping around. They both largely get away with that and squeeze their way through and past the number 42 at the same time, which is trying to get out of harm's way, I think. I'm not sure that it's going to make it back towards the pit lane now, so it does look as though it's going to be a potential retirement out on circuit for the 42. And the safety car is coming out actually, so safety car making its way out onto circuit, and that is because of Perry Darling's car stricken there at Copse Corner. We've done a couple of laps behind it, but you can see the damage to Perry Darling's car, and potentially with Alan Williams now in the 42 expiring out on circuit. Safety car comes back out, so for Simon Clark, he can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief, because he was only half a second up the road from Jake McAleer, who last time through did set the fastest lap that we've seen so far, 2 minutes 21.209 from Jake McAleer. We were down in the 2 minute 19s earlier on. So let me just run you down through the order then whilst we remain under safety car. It is the car of Simon Clark that leads the way from Jake McAleer in second place. The silver fronted car will be Mark McAleer, who's there in third place. Pete Morris is fourth. Steve Cheetham having a really good run in fifth position, say joining the championship for this weekend, but it's been a long time Porsche race. It'd be good to see a bit more of Steve in this championship. Chris Dyer is there in sixth place. Jim Bryan is seventh. Ed Hayes is eighth. Richard Bayston is there in ninth place, and completing the top 10 is car number 10, which is Julian Morris. In 11th place, it's number 55, Stuart Marsden. Then in 12th, that will be the leader of the AM category, which is number 69, Oliver Chatham, who leaves the AM category. 13th will be Shiraz Khan, who's second in AM, and Darren Lebet, who is the number 52 car, is 14th overall, and he will be third in the AM category. If we look towards what's going on in the Boxster Cup, then for the Boxster Cup we need to look outside of the top 20 that's shown on your screens. And the lead in the Boxster Cup, in reality at the moment, is going away of car number 123, which is Max Watt. Second in Boxster Cup will be Bertie Bream, the number 8 car, and third in the Boxster Cup is going to be the 51 at the moment, which is Stuart Warner, who's made good progress, because I think he started something like 10th on the grid in Boxster Cup. And this is the largely silver and orange number 51 car, so he has made excellent progress if that's the case, if he's up to third in the Boxster Cup at this stage. So safety car out there. We saw a chunk of safety car in the race earlier on today for them. Hopefully this will be a slightly briefer affair, and while we get Perry Darling's car out of harm's way with that damage to the tail end of it. And the Boxster Cup is a very cheap way of going Porsche racing as well. If you want to get involved, then I'd certainly recommend the Porsche Club Championship Boxster Cup. So it's for the 986 Boxster models, so those that were built between 2018 and 2021, and whether it be the earlier variant of it, so or the later variants, there's subtle different power differences between the pair of them, but the equalisation means that you are in for some good racing in the Porsche Boxster Cup. You run on Pirelli P0 Trofeo road tyres as well. You're limited to just 2 sets for the season, so it's a very affordable way of going Porsche racing. And certainly for Max Watt, he's been the star in Boxster Cup so far this year. There it is, the number 123 car. That is the leader of the Boxster Cup. So it's nice and easy to tell the different classes apart. If it's got a yellow windscreen header, it runs in the main Porsche Championship. If it's got a black windscreen header, it runs in the Porsche AM Championship, which is Class 2 as it's also known. And if it's got a white windscreen header, like Perry Darling's car, heading through the gravel trap, then that car runs in the Boxster Cup. That's the easy way to tell them apart this weekend, because of course usually we'd have the main championship and the AM Championship mixed together on one grid, and the Boxster Cup would have a separate grid with its own race. But for this weekend we can accommodate all of these cars onto the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit at the same time, so it makes for a very, very busy circuit. So Simon Clark still working his way around the track. Simon, who is I think he's a 4 times champion, whether it be class or overall, but he's a 2 times overall champion. He's the reigning overall champion, 2024 champion. He secured the championship in 2020 as well. He lies second in the championship standings coming into this weekend with 3 wins, but of course he did non-start earlier on today, and with a couple of poor results at Anglesey, meaning that he's already got 2 bad scores. You can only drop 2 bad scores. He's got to now count one of his scores, which will be the Anglesey round, where he scored probably just 1 single point, and it might be the same for earlier on, where maybe he gets the point for entering, and that's about it. So whereas everybody else is going to be scoring, in the case of Jake McAleer from earlier on today, probably 39 championship points, to just score 1 and have to count it is really going to mean it's not a nail in the coffin for your championship, because you still don't know what might happen to Jake McAleer at, say, Donington Park or the final rounds at Snetterton. But what Simon Clark can't afford now, because he's now had 3 poor scores, is another poor score. Whereas for someone like Jake McAleer, yeah, he had a poor score at Anglesey, but he still scored 11 points, so he can now afford to be a little more inconsistent if that were to happen. But he's had brilliant consistency so far this year, Jake McAleer, and he'll be already doing the maths in his head, thinking, okay, if I just finish second here, don't need to push for the win for Simon Clark. If I just finish second, that's another raft of championship points. That's another 21 championship points. And if I can pick up fastest lap, like I've already got in this race, you know, if nobody goes any quicker, that's another championship point to add to the tally. And I'm sure as a driver, Jake will be doing that maths just to see if he can make sure that if you stay consistent, if you've built that little advantage, you've got that little buffer, stay consistent then for the final 4 races of the year, as it will be after this race takes place, then puts him in a very, very strong position to lift potentially the Class 1 crown for this year. Whether he can lift the overall title will remain to be seen, what happens in the likes of the AM category and of course Class 3, the Boxster Cup. So we've got 13.5 minutes of the race still to go. Still remaining under safety car for the moment. The lights still are extinguished on the safety car as it comes up towards Brooklands, which again suggests that there will be another lap behind the safety car. So when we get back racing, there's certainly going to be less than 10 minutes of racing to go, because it's taking at the moment, with 13 minutes and a tiny bit of change to go, it's taking about 3.5 minutes to do a lap behind the safety car, if not longer. So let's have a quick look back whilst we remain on the safety car. Some of the highlights from the race so far. So it was Simon Clark that was on pole position with Jake McAleer alongside him, and when the lights went out for the first batch of cars, they all charged their way up towards Copse Corner for the first time. As they went in towards Copse Corner, though, unfortunately in the Boxster Cup there were problems. There was a spin for Perry Darling, he was collected, and lots of damage to the tail end of his Porsche Boxster would mean that the safety car would eventually come out. There was a moment for the race leader Simon Clark on the first lap as well. He was all over the grass. Cole Pirelli's braking a little bit late, just about kept the car under control and hung on to the lead of the race. Steve Cheetham was having a brilliant battle with Richard Baston. Richard Baston dives on the brakes for Club Corner, locked everything up, flat spotted the Pirellis and lost a few places along the way. But that incident, I'm afraid, that we saw for Perry Darling has brought about this safety car period, and at some point we will get the race back underway. Say 12 minutes to go, safety car just heading up towards Stowe Corner, and I think it's upped its pace a little bit this time through. Yes, absolutely, it took nearly 72 seconds to go through the first sector of the lap last time. It is into the 57s this time, so it is 12-15 seconds quicker just through the first quarter of the lap in reality, which means that that is probably the indication that you can speed the pace up this time through the safety car, because you're going to be coming in at the end of it, and that is good news by the look of things. So everybody's starting to, I think, prepare themselves for the restart, including Oliver Chatham, the number 69 car who leads Class 2, the AM category. And of course, let's not forget that we've got Max Watt, car number 123, leading the Porsche Boxster Cup. So the safety car is just trundling its way through the right-hander at Abbey, up towards Farm Curve, and then it'll be up to Simon Clark as to when he wants to get things back underway and get the race restarted. When the lights go out on the safety car, it'll be roughly underneath the Wellington Bridge where the lights will go out on the safety car, and that will be the true indication that it will be in at the end of this lap, because there's no suggestion from race control at the moment it's coming in at the end of this lap. But I just have that feeling, you know, the pace seems to have speeded up. Looks as though Perry Darling's car was out of harm's way, and hopefully we'll be good to go at the end of this lap. But when we do get going, there's no overtaking until the start-finish line. You have to hold your position until you get to the control line. So lights go out, as I expected, on the safety car. So we are going to get back racing, and it's going to be around about 10 minutes to go, isn't it? So Simon Clark just now deciding as to when he wants to go. The safety car will accelerate its way in towards the pit lane, and then Simon Clark will decide as to when he wants to plant his foot at the wheel of his 997, and he goes for it just on the approach towards Luffield Corner. Jake McAleer, Mark McAleer all going with him. It's been a good restart from all of those running in the main Porsche Club Championship by the look of things, and as they head over the start-finish line, it's Simon Clark that leads the way at the wheel of his 997 from Jake McAleer and Mark McAleer. Pete Morris sitting there in 4th place, and the leading Cayman at the moment will be Steve Cheetham, who's there in 5th position, or was at least. You can see the sun glinting off the cars now, and really difficult to pick out whom is whom as they head up towards Copse Corner. Through there side by side, that's the number 44 car, which was Andrew Porter, getting lent on by Tom Andrew, I think that was. But for Simon Clark, it's been a reasonable restart from him. Jake McAleer is looking to try and stick with the task in hand now in 2nd place, and he gets a good exit coming out of Maggots and Beckett's and Chapel Curve and onto the Hanger Straight. Is he going to try anything up towards the braking area for Stowe? No, he jinks out from behind Simon Clark just to take a normal racing line in towards the corner and carry as much apex speed as he can to see whether he can close the door a little bit more onto the bumper of the race leader. And off, I'm afraid, and that's Stuart Marsden that's had an off, and that is in his new car for this weekend at Copse Corner, where he's made contact with the barriers. And with that car stricken where it is, I do fear that could have the potential for another safety car. Now, I did say Steve Cheetham was running there in 5th place, but he isn't anymore. Steve Cheetham has dropped down into 6th position and has lost ground with the car that he was hunting down. Pete Morris has pulled away, and having got past Steve Cheetham is now Chris Dyer, the number 9 car. So that's been a poor lap from Steve Cheetham. Here comes Pete Morris now, I'm talking about, up towards the braking area for Village. He's in 4th. Teammate Chris Dyer behind him in the Strasser prepared cars. Faye Noble-Evans trying to see what she can do, and unfortunately I think he's getting unpicked by a couple of cars. In fact, is that a problem for Faye Noble-Evans? I fear it might be, you know. She was slowing down out there on circuit with 8 minutes to go for the Boxster Cup. Now, this is number 1, 2, 3, Max Watt, who is under real pressure for the Boxster Cup, and I'm afraid has lost the lead of the Boxster Cup, because gaining the place there and squeezing his way through was Bertie Bream, and now it looks though might even possibly lose a further place, because trying to draw himself alongside there, looks as though that's Vince Brewer, car number 171, is it? But I think the safety car is coming back out, and any places that have been overtaken under those yellow flags just before drivers were truly aware what was going on are going to have to be given back. So there might be some further shuffling in the order this time through. So 7 minutes of the race still to go. Back under safety car, I'm led to believe we are, with the car of, there is the safety car, but it hasn't quite come out of pit lane to catch the race leaders. Oh dear. So with 4 cars having gone through, now if those ahead are sensible here, now just back off. If the safety car can overtake them, then it saves having to reform the pack fully, and if the safety car driver is able to tell race control what's happened, he might be able to overtake all 4, because if he doesn't, and I think he's going to, yeah, this is good driving. This is really good from the front runners, being aware what's going on, because if the safety car comes out late, which sometimes if it's a late call for the safety car, it can't get out in time. If that safety car had have stayed in 4th place, those 4 cars at the front 4 in the race would have to go all the way round to form the queue. But then, of course, what we don't have is a leader behind the safety car. So the safety car then has to wave everybody else back through to hold the top 4 through. And each time they all have to catch around what is a 3.6 mile circuit. So we would have been safety car for the rest of this race. As it is, there is the possibility we can go racing once more, because those cars, the top 4, slowed down. The safety car driver was confident enough that he could speed up and he could overtake them, and now what we have is the correct car behind the safety car. There's no reshuffling and waving cars by needed, so that is good observant driving and good communication from race control to safety car driver and observer, and well done to the top 4 there for working out what was going on. Simon Clark, Jake McAleer, Mark McAleer and Pete Morris. So we're back under safety car with Stuart Marsden's car off and in the barriers, and that is a new car for Stuart for this weekend, moving up to the club championship. He had a big accident at Anglesey where I think he was going 3 wide on the first lap and dipped a couple of wheels onto the grass, and as you go up towards the uphill braking area for the left-hand flick at Rocket, Stuart was a little bit out of control on the grass, and I'm afraid not only caused a significant amount of damage to his car but other cars as well, including Julian Morris's, which was a write-off. So Stuart's at the wheel of a new car this weekend, but I'm afraid it's already in the barriers. 5 minutes of the race to go. Let's see how long it takes to clear up. Hopefully not too long, because it looked as though it was front end damage to the car with the bumper missing, and if all the wheels are pointing in the right direction, it might just be a case of drag it out of harm's way, even if it's into the centre of the circuit, and at least get a couple of racing laps in, because the Porsche Club Motorsport had fewer racing laps than anybody would have wished earlier on with a safety car, and this is now the second safety car in this race, which again is slightly shortening the amount of racing laps available to them. In terms of the class leaders at this stage, leading the race overall, and the leader of the Porsche Club Motorsport Championship is Simon Clark. Lying down in 10th position is the number 69 car, which is Oliver Chatham. He leads the Porsche Club Championship AM category, and leading the Boxster category at this stage is going to be in 18th position, number 8, Bertie Bream, who I think just took the lead before the safety car came out, whereas Max Watt had dropped to, I think, what was 3rd in the Boxster Cup, but squeezing through and past him went, was that Charles Dyer? Was that, no, squeezing through past him went Julian Dye, but I think that was just as the safety car boards came out, so they have now themselves sorted that positioning out I think Julian Dyer aware that he probably completed the overtake as the safety car came out, but hadn't quite, in his peripheral vision, seen the flags. So they have subsequently sorted themselves out, and back through has gone Max Watt. So he is now still second in the Boxster category, but is right behind Bertie Bream once more. He hasn't got an AM category car to try and overtake. And that's, of course, if we go back racing, because safety car is heading up towards Copse Corner. And if we don't go racing at the end of this lap, we would finish under safety car, because there is enough time to conclude this lap, and there'll be a bit of time left for one flying lap. But if the lights stay on the safety car, I think we're done for, I'm afraid, which is a real shame. But the one good thing is we've still got Donington Park to look forward to on the 20th of September. 2 further 25-minute races there. And the 11th of October is going to be the final 2 races that place at Snetterton on the 300 circuit there. And that would conclude another season of Porsche Club Championship racing, which is a championship which has continually evolved over the years. Each year, looking at what's the next model that becomes eligible. When I first started covering it, it was all the original air-cooled 911s that were part of the championship, and then you started to see some of the newer cars come in, including some of the front-engine Porsches for a period of time as well. Things like the 968s and the 968 Club Sports, which all became eligible over the years. And then, of course, we've moved through to the 993s, the 996s, the 997s. The 993 is now starting as a road car to appreciate back in value again, as most Porsches do. They depreciate and then appreciate again. And nobody nowadays is probably going to convert another road 993 into a race car. So it's the 996s and the 997s that are those that, and then of course we'll start to see the 9911 and the 9912 no doubt come in at some stage as well. So Stuart Marsden's car, minus front bumpers, damage to the front, is still on circuit. The safety car is coming under the Wellington Bridge, and I'm afraid that means that with Stuart Marsden's car still on track and there still being a telehandler there, that we are not going to get the incident cleared before we run out of time. So the safety car will continue round for a further lap, but of course when it continues round for that next lap, the clock will have ticked to 0 by the next time they come round. So I'm sure all the drivers will be disappointed with it. One driver who might be less disappointed is Simon Clark, of course, because he is potentially on course to scoop up another win. So are they going to show check the flag this time? I wouldn't have thought so, because there's still time on the clock, but it wouldn't surprise me if they opt to, because it's a bit of a moot point. Yeah, we're still under safety car. We've only got a few seconds remaining on the clock, so next time they come through, it will be checkered flag, I'm afraid. I could hear it from my commentary box, and there in the sky, the beautiful sight of a Spitfire. So fantastic to see it out there, the howl of that Merlin engine, that familiar wing shape as well, and always good to see in the skies. I come from Lincolnshire, which is where we have the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight Base, but it's very seldom actually I get to see the Hurricane, the Spitfire or the Lancaster that form part of that Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. So it's good to see it out there, and it's amazing how frequently we do have aircraft that are in the area come over racetracks. I was at Donington Park just a couple of weekends ago, and we had the Red Arrows come over that were on their way from a display down south and heading up towards Aberdeen. So they flew over and actually put the smoke on as they came over, and it was another few weekends ago, I can't recall where I was, I think it was Brands Hatch, and the Lancaster came over the top of the circuit. So always wonderful to see, and you can still hear that whirl of that Merlin engine up there. I think the drivers know that that's it as well. I can see there Pete Morris with his hand out of the window, Chris Dyer with his hand out of the window. They all know that that is it. The clock has ticked to 0. It wasn't to be the race that they were hoping for, but unfortunately with the first safety car period and then the requirement with Stuart Marsden's off for a second safety car period, we are going to end this second Porsche Club Motorsport Championship with Pirelli, and of course the Boxster Cup, and let's forget the AM Championships in there as well under safety car period. So for Simon Clark, after the disappointment and the non-start from earlier on today, he is now going to pick up what for him will be his 4th win of the 2025 championship season. As we say, with now 3 bad finishes so far this year and 3 poor scoring rounds, he's going to have to count one of them. So arguably the championship is not looking good for him, because he's going to have to counter poor score, and he's now reliant on problems and issues and non-starts for other drivers. But he'll still be happy that he's come away from Silverstone with a win in the second of the 2 races. But we can't confirm that, of course, until he has taken the checkered flag. But on the basis that they're all just trundling their way behind the safety car, that is pretty much a done deal, isn't it, for him? So out of Village, out of the loop, round through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight for what will be the final time. And then once they take the checkered flag, which it should be at the end of this lap, you know, even if we've got Stuart Marsden's car out of harm's way, there's no time to go racing anymore, I'm afraid, unless they decide they can extend the race. But I'm sure that won't be the case with the clock having ticked to 0. So through the left-hander at Brooklands, under ever-clearing skies as well. The cloud has slowly burnt off throughout today and turned out to be quite a beautiful afternoon. And for Simon Clark, it's the perfect afternoon, because he had troubles this morning where he qualified on the front row of the grid but couldn't start, and he is here to claim a pole position and claim a win in the second race of the weekend. The checkered flag comes out this time. Simon Clark goes through to claim the win from Jake McAleer in second position, and Mark McAleer will finish in 3rd place. 4th place will go the way of Julian Morris in the end, in 4th place. He'll be pleased with that in the brand new car that was built up over 3 weeks and was really only completed with its gearbox woes. It was completed on Tuesday, but with the gearbox woes it wasn't finished till 1 a.m. on Friday morning, so that's a good way to repay the team. Chris Dyer finishing in 5th place, and Steve Cheetham finishing in 6th place. Jim Bryan, Ed Hayes and... Sorry, Julian Morris did not. Sorry, it's Pete Morris that finished in 4th place. Chris Dyer in 5th. Then it's Steve Cheetham, Jim Bryan, Ed Hayes and Julian Morris finishes in 9th position. I do apologise, all I get is the surnames. And then it's Oliver Chatham who's there in 10th place, and he'll be the winner of the AM category, finishing inside the top 10. So hopefully we can just confirm some results for you now that all of the cars have headed over the start-finish line. Not the race that we wanted, but it is a win for Simon Clark from Jake McAleer and Mark McAleer. Pete Morris finishing in 3rd place out of Chris Dyer, Steve Cheetham, Jim Bryan, Ed Hayes and Julian Morris in 9th place, with Oliver Chatham the winner of the AM category and finished in 10th place. Then it was Shiraz Khan ahead of Damon Labette and Tom Andrew, with Wayne Gregory next up ahead of Andrew Porter, and then the number 56 car, which is going to be Jason Brown. Andre Giorgio was next up, with Bertie Bream in 18th place being the winner of the Boxster Cup, just from Max Watt, and he made that overtake just as the safety car came out. Julian Dye was next up, and then it's going to be Jess Wilkinson through from the car that finished in 30th position, which is going to be the number 60 car of Tony Levy. And so they continue from there on as well, with the problems for some of the cars towards the tail end. You can see a huge grid of cars, 40 cars in total in the Porsche Club Championship, and even then right the way down to 45th, which will include the cars that we lost along the way, the likes of Mike Thompson, who we lost up there at Copse Corner, and Perry Darling, who brought about their incident together, the first safety car of the day. So that is it. That's all from the Porsche Club Motorsport Championship with Pirelli and the Boxster Cup. Thanks for joining us here at Silverstone. We'll see you next time out when we are at Donington Park for round 11 and 12 of the championship on the 20th of September. So until then, it's goodbye.